Kia ora, koutou everybody. Thanks, Cheryl, for that. My name is Prajesh, and I am actually sitting here in a motel in Christchurch. So I empathize with those down south with the lovely cold weather this morning. It was -3 this morning when we went to the gym. Yeah, I'm frozen, but it's nice and warm now. It is my pleasure to introduce our first session today. The sessions today are going to have speakers, and the speakers are going to have 20 minutes to have a chat about their conversation. At the 5-minute mark to go, Karen is going to ring a bell. Karen, let's ring the bell. She's forgotten. Ding, ding, ding. That's what it sounds like.
Prajesh, sorry, I'm just sending the link to another careers advisor who couldn't find it. Here's the bell, everyone. How's that? Not too loud?
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Okay.
So for our speakers at the 5-minute mark, that means it's time to start wrapping up your session. What we'll do is we will take questions at the end of the session. So we have 3 speakers first up, and we'll take the questions at the end. If we run out of time for questions, if you put them in the chat, like Karen has said, we'll collate them and we'll send out the answers later on once we get the answers from the speakers. Everyone's happy? We're going to get into it. It is my pleasure to welcome our first speaker, Professor Arlene McDowell. I did a bit of research and I found her own webpage, which is cool. Professor Arlene McDowell has an undergraduate in botany, and then she's done some pretty cool things, looking at drug delivery in possum and mice and salmon. But today she's not here to talk about any of that kind of stuff there. Well, I don't think so. She's here to speak about our newest program, one of our newest programs called the Bachelor of Pharmaceutical Science. Let's give a warm welcome to Professor Arlene McDowell. Okay, cool. Take it away.
Great, thank you. Are you able to see my screen share? Yep, fantastic. Okay, so kia ora, everybody. It really is my pleasure to be here today. So I'm the director of a brand new program that we've launched at the University of Otago, and I'm very excited to be able to tell you guys about it today. So it's a new degree for the university, but also in New Zealand. So I think that's an important point for you guys, is that it's the only offering of this type of degree in New Zealand. So it's a Bachelor of Pharmaceutical Science, and basically it's about, I try to sort of bring it down to its essence, and it's about the discovery, design, development, assessment and production of medicines, but also other bioactives. So think about the pharmaceutical industry is the obvious choice where you could think this would lead students. However, it could also be used in things like the food industry, fertilizers, even the explosive industry uses the sort of principles that students would be taught in this degree. And it's launched this year, so it's all brand new and shiny. So I think the global pandemic has really highlighted the importance that we have a workforce that is able to very quickly upskill and produce new medicines. So being able to produce the COVID vaccine is quite of an amazing thing that's happened over the recent years. And that has used a liposome formulation. So it's a type of medicine that's referred to as a nanomedicine. And that is something that is incorporated within our degree program. So how do you put together a vaccine and then deliver it safely to patients? So what types of things will students study? So people that have got an interest in chemistry, this degree would be suited to them. So they'll be learning lots about chemical structures, how those components are transferred into powdered formulations, because that's typically what industry would work with. And then how do we put that into a medicine or a dosage form that people will use? Sorry, my slides are automatically advancing for some reason. So the degree structure that we've got is looking at it. It's a 3 years bachelor's degree. So they will start off doing approximately health science first year. It's not all of the papers. At the moment, it's 6 of the papers of health science first year. So some chemistry and biology and cells and things like that. And then our degree offers 4 papers at the 200 level and then 6 papers at the 300 level. And there's information about that in the details on the webpage I'll give you. We're also in the process of developing an honours year. So after they would complete the bachelor's degree, they could stay and do a research year that would be an honours degree. And then, of course, we encourage students to progress into research degrees and do something like a PhD or a master's so that they can continue on in the research space. So another type of thing that we will be studying, or the students will be studying, is about dosage forms. So how do you put medicines into patients? So the range of different dosage forms, asthma inhalers, tablets are very common. injections, those types of things, and also understanding what happens once that medicine is in the body, so the blood levels and the effect that those drugs have on patients as well. The other important aspect of our degree is that we will be incorporating principles of Rawanga in our degree, so acknowledging the very important knowledge that we have in the Maori traditional medicines in New Zealand, but also acknowledging that around the world traditional medicines are used by a large number of people. So spending time looking at extracting the active compounds from plant materials and what effect do they have on cells. And again, that's a bit of a unique offering in New Zealand. How will you study? We've got an amazing group of really dedicated academic staff that are subject experts. So we come from quite a varied group. So pharmaceutical science is a multidisciplinary sort of area. So we have microbiologists, chemists. As the introduction, I trained as a botanist. And we've got biochemists and pharmacists that are part of our team. So fantastic group of people that are very active in research. So it really is research-informed teaching that the students will receive. We're going to have a lot of small group activities. So this is where students can really get down one-on-one with academics and the teaching staff and really understand the principles that they're going through, so they get a very thorough knowledge of the material. And very importantly, it's a hands-on degree. So we're really encouraging students when in the lab, lots of individual activities, lots of stuff. So they're going to be very skilled in having these pretty lab skills and practical skills that we know that the industry wants. So lots of stuff and experiments in the labs that students will be doing. So the outcomes, graduate outcomes for this program. So we would expect that our graduates will be demonstrating specialist knowledge. So they're going to uniquely know about things like chemistry and formulation science and pharmacokinetics and medicines, economics, and those sorts of things, with practical skills, as I've mentioned. So we expect that they can work efficiently and appropriately in a lab, and also be able to apply that knowledge that they've learned in order to be able to solve the contemporary challenges. So the next pandemic that comes along, we will be able to have some homegrown graduates that can be contributing to the development of those sorts of medicines of international relevance as well. So we would like that it not only helps New Zealand, but of course we can have a global impact on where these graduates can go once they've finished with us. So where can they go once students graduate from our degree? Pharmaceutical industry, as I mentioned, is the natural choice. It's the obvious progression from this type of degree. And that's both within New Zealand and internationally. So we've spoken with international leaders in the field around the world when we're putting together this degree and developing it, so we know what they want. And so we've been able to meet those needs of what international industry is after. Things like analytical chemists, so border control workers, so working out what drugs have been imported into the country. That's a potential place where people could work. As I mentioned in the introduction, think wider than just pharma. So cosmetics industry, food industries, paint is just a formulation. It's effectively a cosmetic for your wall. Agrochemicals, so making fertilizers that we rely on in New Zealand. And as I've mentioned, explosive industry, so putting in the mining industry, making bombs that blow up mines. Spin out companies is also a really cool opportunity. So if students are entrepreneurial and interested in pushing the boundary and maybe combining things with a little bit of commerce and economics, then that's sort of a really nice way that students can know some science knowledge, but then expand it into some cool spin out companies. Government organisations are always after types of graduates that know things about medicines and knowing the regulations and how you test quality of products and things like that. Patent attorneys, again, a nice combination of a law and science sort of put together in this sort of pharmaceutical space. And many others. So as you'll appreciate, this is a new degree. And so we're very interested to follow where our students go. But this is looking at examples of other degrees. Monash University in Australia has a similar program. So we've looked to see where their graduates go, and that's where we would expect our students would do the same thing. I also just wanted to highlight that in building this degree, we've established some international collaboration. So I mentioned that we've got that international hookup. So China is some place that we've got some relationships built with Chinese universities. India and Taiwan is also places where we are going to. And the European market is also represented in research collaborations that we have within the school. So it's not just a New Zealand degree, we've got some real international representation occurring too. So I just thought I'd head off some questions. These are typical questions that people get. How is a BPharm Sci different from other existing programs? So the School of Pharmacy offers this new degree, but we also have a Bachelor of Pharmacy that's been running for a very long time. But this is the Bachelor of Pharmacy is a professional degree. So that's for students that would like to work in a pharmacy in a hospital or in the community. So the students from BPharm Sci are not considered to be professional students in terms of being able to practice being a pharmacist. Is it different from a Bachelor of Science majoring in pharmacology? Yes, it is. The pharmacology major is much more focused than what we would do. We have a very broad degree that takes students really from the inception of the chemistry of individual compounds and why they're active all the way through to formulation, understanding how they work, and then marketing and regulation and quality control. So our degree covers, in pharmacology is incorporated within that, but our degree is a whole lot broader. And is it different from Biomed Sci with drugs and human health? That degree has more of a biomedical focus. Again, those aspects are incorporated in our degree, but our degree is broader than that. And I've probably already touched on that last point, that the BPharm Sci is what's required by industry. If people want to go through and work in that degree, our consultation has shown that that's where people in industry liked the BPharm Sci degree. So if you would like to learn more, I'm happy to answer questions through the various channels that we can. But on the School of Pharmacy website, we've got a tile where students can find out, or you guys can find out more information. There's also an email address that actually comes to me ultimately. So an administrator filters that through to me. So it's probably me that will be answering questions that come through there, but happy to do that. And I just thought I'd leave you with a little bit of the marketing. So this has been an important part. I've had to upskill in marketing and knowing about what we need to do. So medication innovation is one of the taglines that we've settled on. So understanding how we make innovative medicines, and also the fact that, as I mentioned, we're a unique new lab-based degree that occurs in New Zealand. So I've made it nice and quick for you guys. So there's 5 minutes for questions, I guess, but I'll hand that over to the chair and I will stop sharing.
Awesome. Thank you, Arlene. We've got some time, so forget what I said before about putting your questions in the chat. Does anybody have any questions that Arlene can answer straight away as opposed to emailing her? Don't be shy to turn off your mute and ask away.
Rajesh, am I allowed to ask a question?
No, you're not. No. Yes,
I should know the answer. I'm schools liaison. Arlene, I'm just wondering, so because we meet students in high school and they're often not really sure exactly where they want to go, like what advice would you give them about which pathway to take to keep as many options open?
Sure. So our degree, you're able to mix and match with other subjects. So you don't have to purely do the Bachelor of Pharmaceutical Science if you don't want to lock in quite so closely yet. And you can supplement our degree with other papers. So if you are interested in chemistry, do some chemistry papers, do some of our papers, and then that keeps your options open about where you ultimately end up. So our degree is able to blend with other. Botany is also a really nice match because a lot of the stuff, a lot of drugs and actives come from plants. Food science will be another good match. So the students are able to keep that diversity for the first couple of years anyway, until they sort of establish which area sort of excites them the most and where they want to go.
Awesome, thank you. We've just had a few questions. So one is, what are the entry requirements? And I'm assuming it will be UE. But the second thing is, are there any restrictions on the number of students in the degree?
Yep, cool, thank you. So entry requirements, they'll need to come through from health science first year effectively. So if they pass their papers at first year level, that's all we're after. We're not after a particular grade requirement. They just need to pass those health science first year papers. And other restriction of numbers, no, not yet. We've been welcoming students with open arms. We're just starting off this year, so we have a small cohort, and we imagine that will build over time. And so we haven't had to cap that number at the moment.
Great, thanks. And one other question. So students that have studied the Bachelor of Biomed in their first year, as opposed to Health Sci first year. So they didn't do Health Sci first year, they started in the Bachelor of Biomed.
Yep.
Are they able to swap into the second year of your degree?
I will say yes, with a qualifier that they'll just need to make sure the prerequisites are hit. So we have 6 papers that are required in the first year. So if they've done and passed those papers, then yes, we would accept them into that.
Awesome, those are great questions. Anyone else? But here's another question from Mayora. Can existing scholarship apply to entrance into this degree? I think the answer is yes to that. I think your entrance scholarships cover any of our programs.
Cool.
Here's a question that is actually on my mind, Arlene. A student asked me about cosmetic design a few days ago, and also about becoming a perfumer. Is this something that we can get into with this program here?
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, the principles that, formulation science is mixing things, right? Mixing chemicals together and having a particular outcome. So yeah, gosh, that's cool. I'd never heard of doing that sort of that opportunity. But yes, the skills they would learn through us would be relevant to that program. Yeah, cool.
Awesome. Thank you, Brett. These are fantastic questions. We've got lots of time here.
Yeah, well, we're really learning too about what sort of students would be interested in our degree, right? We've got an idea, but we're fascinated to hear the types of students and their pathways, where they think they're going to go, sort of through this degree that would be useful to them.
I have a question for you, Arlene, just leading off that there. University of Canterbury has a formulation design in their product innovation program. How would that equate to the pharmaceutical science? Could they learn the same skill set? And
it'll be similar. Again, I think we probably go from more basics through, so the pipeline is probably longer through our degree. So, we've got chemists that are really fantastic at identifying targets for new drugs and that sort of stuff. So students will learn about that detailed aspects of chemistry. And then at the end, we've got a paper that is, looking at what you need to know to be in pharma, and sort of what are the market regulations and the costs, sort of, implications of medicines and those sorts of things. So it really goes from the beginning to the end.
Brilliant. We've got 2 questions. One's from Cheryl. Do you want to speak about your connection to Maori Medicine and how that's going to integrate into the program?
Yeah, so at the moment, thank you for that question. At the moment, we do have some Maori representation within the Bachelor of Pharmacy. So we have some traditional medicine consultants that come and teach to our Bachelor of Pharmacy students. So we've got a connection with those that they're willing to contribute into one of our third-year papers that we're going to be focusing on Maori medicine, but also international medicines as well. And we also have quite a strong focus. We've got an Associate Dean, Maori, Liaison Takadu, so is with our group, and she's a very enthusiastic supporter of making sure that these Maori medicines are utilised appropriately, and so Leanne is having feedback into our program as well.
Brilliant. Arlene, there's a question that just from Kay, who just wants to see the slide about the degree structure, just to see how it actually looks, just as a bit of a. Okay. So Kay is asking, how do they manage to fit in other sciences into the program?
Sure. Yes, I actually took that one out. Sorry, I didn't. I had something more detailed and then I took it out. So we are required this. We offer 4 papers in second year, and so students can take another 2 papers as part of the program. So they could pick up 2 chemistry papers, chemistry, botany, food science, other sorts of, and then in the third year, they're only required to do 4 of the 6 that we offer. So again, there's options for them to do another couple of papers as well as our papers.
Yeah. Just to remind everybody as well, when young people come to the university, they will be helped along the way. So even if they're not too sure what they're doing in their first year, at each stage, they will help to grow their degree and build their degree.
The other thing I wanted to point out too is that students can supplement, if they're doing a Bachelor of Science degree, they can dip in and do 1 or 2 or 3 of our papers. So they can still perhaps get that taste of the formulation or parts of our degree that they're interested in to sort of supplement their knowledge. If they're even doing an arts degree or anything, they can still pick up. So we're an 18-point papers. So we're very consistent, so students can sort of mix and match through the university programs.
Yeah, Karen, how much time do we have, Karen?
We don't have too much time, but just some of these quick questions. So entry is the similar papers to Health Sci first year, but Health Sci first year is 7 papers. Yeah, I'm sure you and it's the physics one that you don't need?
No, we need physics.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right. Which is the one that you don't need from health safety?
So it's the public health one, I think.
Population health.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Another quick fire question. Do your graduates go on to Douglas Medicine?
That is an
company?
option. That's an option, yeah.
Cool. And if a student has to pick physics or bio, what would you recommend?
We need both for this degree at the moment. Yeah, so they would need to do both.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much, Arlene. I'll hand
you're
it back
welcome.
to you, Prajesh.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Arlene. If anyone has any more questions, just put them in the chat, and like I said, we'll collate them and we'll send them to Arlene, and we'll reply them back to everybody. Arlene, thank you so much for that. It is really awesome to see this new program, the only one in New Zealand. But the awesome thing about this program is that it incorporates both Maori medicine and Western medicine, but also it's got an international focus. And I'm sure our young people out there would be keen to get involved in this program here, especially because the world is changing quite dramatically in that space there. Thank you very much, Arlene. Let's give her a show of applause, everybody. Cool. Brilliant. There we go. Fantastic. Thanks, you, Arlene. Arlene, are you hanging around or are you going to log off?
No, I was going to hang around and have a listen to some others.
Oh, brilliant. Awesome. Cool. Fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Arlene. Next up, we have some of my favorite people from genetics. Are they in the room?
Yeah, we're here.
Brilliant. Awesome. Cool. So next up, we have Associate Professor Tina Summerfield and Dr. Gillian MacKay. The reason why I say they're some of my favorite people is you can read all the bio about them. But when I met these two lovely people, it was they said to me, "Hey, we're gonna commit a murder, and then we're gonna find out who committed the crime." And then I ended up being the person that was murdered, which is quite sad. But it was a very practical way of showing how geneticists do some part of their work. And our team has been very lucky to go into the lab and extract DNA and do some pretty cool things with them. So I'm going to hand it over to them to talk about the program that we run at the University of Otago. Thanks, team. Who's speaking first? I guess you guys will sort it out.
Kia ora, everyone. So I'm Dr. Gillian MacKay.
I'm Associate Professor Tina Summerfield. Kia ora.
Kia ora. I'll just share my screen. The joys of Zoom technology. There we go.
You're all good.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, and I should have said I'm the Senior Teaching Fellow for Genetics here at Otago.
And I'm the Deputy Director of the Genetics Teaching Programme. So why genetics? So I think, oh, I'm on the wrong, Jill's in charge. I think it's a really exciting time to study genetics. I think we've finally got the technological advances in the last 5 or 10 years, the computational power and some molecular tools that really enable us to sort of ask the questions that people have been wanting to look at for a long time. So it's a really groundbreaking subject. Impacts lots and lots of different areas of your lives, which hopefully will convince you. It's practical, hands-on. The students are in the lab doing lab work, writing lab reports. We like to challenge the students in terms of their practical skills and in terms of critical thinking. As I said, it impacts on every area of our society, of our lives. And we like to say that it's taught by top genetics researchers and practitioners from across Australia. So we say that we've got some really enthusiastic genetics researchers that we're able to draw into the teaching program. And it's wide ranging. So if you're interested in biology, I think that genetics encompasses lots and lots of different areas of biology. So from the medical side across to sort of things in the environmental side as well. And we've put together content in our program that covers all of those areas. So it says a comprehensive course. So why at Otago, I've already said this, I think. So genetics is important in all modern biology. So things, I'm going to show you some examples, right? And includes medicine as well.
Okay, so we can use genetic techniques to look at DNA, and we can use this to solve crimes or look at paternity testing. And in the image here, you can see this is a car park in Leicester, and under this car park in Leicester, there was a skeleton found, and by analysing the DNA, they found that it was the skeleton of King Richard III. And so they compared the DNA in the skeletons to some known living relatives. So one of those examples was Benedict Cumberbatch, the actor, and they were able to prove that this was in fact the skeleton of King Richard, and they were able to give him a proper king's burial. So we can use lots of different genetic modification techniques. And I mean, it's amazing what we can do now with genetics to solve lots of different problems. So here's just an example of some fluorescent genes. And we can look at gene expression in living tissue using fluorescent genes. So these are just some examples of some bacteria. And this is a jellyfish, and the green fluorescent protein, so that's my favorite gene, comes from this jellyfish, and it glows under UV light. So we can attach that gene to other genes and look at where the genes are being expressed in living tissue. And if you go to America, you can actually go into a pet shop and you can buy a fluorescent fish, a fluorescent zebrafish. But in New Zealand and Aotearoa, we can't do this. So we've got really strict regulation around genetic modification and what we can do.
So there's also a range of applications in plant research and agriculture. So if we think outside of, so I guess there's two branches. There's one where you think you might genetically modify or engineer an organism to improve it, but there's also a lot of value in knowing the diversity of organisms and their genetic background and being able to select the best organism. So in New Zealand, that's currently where we're at. We're using the more traditional genetics approaches, but we still have this massive potential around genetic engineering and genome editing. So things like improving cow fertility, things like improving crops, selecting for increased resistance, so just being able to identify individuals that are more resistant, the genetic basis for that, and selecting for them. Also things like detecting PSA, so you'll remember that the kiwi fruit infection with PSA, using genetic tools to detect things like that. And also linked to agriculture as well, things like mitigating the effects of climate change. So we know there's going to be changes in weather patterns as the growing human population. There's going to be a lot of challenges in the future. So genetics is definitely something that can be drawn on to support that. And again, in the two ways, going back to looking at natural populations, this example here, where you're going back to looking at wild wheat varieties that maybe are more resistant to changes, things like drought and extreme weather patterns that we're going to be seeing. And also you've got the potential to genetically engineer organisms as well. Here we've got another example. It's looking at thinking about using genetic engineering for making less methane producing cows and sheep is another area of research. And also it's not just the agricultural industry that's affected by climate change. You've got native plants that they can be affected too. And it's looking at how we can use genetic tools to sort of protect the native plants too.
So genetics is obviously a really important part of medicine. And so there's different aspects of genetics that can play a role in medicine. So obviously there's diagnostics, and there's also using genetic technology. So we can use DNA cloning, and that was the technology that is used to make the Pfizer vaccine. So the very first step in making the Pfizer vaccine is we've got to be able to get that that gene, the spike protein, and be able to make the messenger RNA. So that's obviously using genetic techniques. And there's other drugs and therapies that are produced. So like insulin that's produced for treatment for diabetics is made using DNA cloning technology. Also, more and more in the future, medicine is going to be targeted specifically around your genome. So it's getting cheaper and cheaper to sequence a person's genome. And I mean, really, we're still in the stone age of actually understanding all this information, but in the future, hopefully that medicines will be actually targeted to your specific genome and to provide treatment. And obviously, COVID's been in the news constantly. And from a genetics point of view, it's actually amazing that people are just freely talking about PCR and variants and things like that. So from genetics point of view, we're quite excited about that. So it's amazing that obviously you looking at genomes. And so you guys actually understand this now, that we can use it, look at genome differences and be able to track the various mutations that are happening of the virus.
And there's also applications that are specific to Aotearoa. So things, for example, working with Maori communities, looking at things like metabolic disease, things that are more prevalent in the Maori community, and also thinking about Tonga species and understanding them more, but in particular, looking at conservation efforts. For example, here we've got the kakapo. So there's been a sequencing of the kakapo genome, and that's really across a lot of individuals, really informing the best conservation practices and the best breeding selection practices for that species. So why come to Otago to study genetics? So it's really, I think one of the things about the genetics is it's the genetics teaching program. So we're not a department, we're a program. And that means that we can draw on researchers from across the university. And so we have people from health sciences and sciences teaching into our degree. So we've got people from 9 different departments who are all active genetics researchers teaching into our degree. And that means we really cover a breadth of genetic interests. So we've got that medical health science component from people like anatomy, biochemistry, microbiology and immunology, pathology, pharmacology and toxicology, women and children's health. And for example, in 3rd year, we have one paper that is all medical genetics, but we also cover more broad areas of biology, getting out into things, other organisms. So they're really looking at the breadth of biological diversity and powerful tools to look at that. And we have people from botany, that includes myself, and zoology, and also maths and stats, looking at different areas of genetics. Was this me as well?
Yes. Oh no, it's me. You can tell I recognize me. Okay, so how do we actually teach genetics? So at university, there's a range of different methods we use. So obviously there's lectures, there's what we call wet labs, so where the students are actually getting in and doing experiments with things. And obviously now, because we need our students to be able to handle data sets and sequences, so there's computer labs. There's also a really big part of genetics is debates and ethics. There's lots of group work, presentations. By 3rd year, our students are doing things like mini research projects. They have a visit to our local CRI ag research, and also obviously, to be a genetics student, you've got to analyse your own DNA sequence. So our students in 3rd year get to sequence their own mitochondrial DNA and analyse that. And they also get to do karyotypes on their own chromosomes as well.
So it's a really exciting time to be learning genetics, as I said, because it's so powerful. And so this great power of genetics means that we've actually got some really challenging questions to think about. So we've got things like people talking about things like de-extinction. So should we be bringing back the moa, for example? You know, should that happen? And also we've got things happening internationally. For example, in China, you've got genome edited babies. And so along with this real excitement comes a lot of considerations and a lot of, I guess, challenges around sort of the ethical, cultural and regulatory perspectives on that. And that's something that we talk about a lot along the degree as well. So I think it's a really exciting and challenging time. And even just considering New Zealand's stance on genetic engineering, and now we have these new technologies that are allow for very precise editing of the genome in a way that you might see happen in nature anyway. So there's really some challenges at the very local level as well to think about. Okay, so what do you need? If you're a student at school, I'd say if you're a student at school and you're enjoying biology and chemistry, then genetics is really something that you might consider. So if you're taking 3rd year biology, chemistry, maths, and we're thinking also the maths, more the statistical side, they would be really useful things to have if you were intending to study genetics. But they are recommended, but they're not essential. And so when you come at 1st year to study genetics, we actually only have 2 papers that we ask you to take. So it's Cells 191 and Chemistry 191. And so Cells really covers our genetics teaching at first year. It's really the sort of the basics of genetics, but it also covers a range of other cellular biology as well. Plus, you get to pick from a range of papers, including biology of animals, plants, how they change the world, biochemistry, ecology, human health, and so maths and stats as well. And we recommend you do take some biochemistry and some statistics. But there's lots of space in there. I guess the thing about the gene program is there's lots of space to try things out. So if you like biology and chemistry, but you're not really sure where to commit, then you could think about starting with genetics and then trying to sample a few of these other papers and sort of narrow down. I think it's quite a challenge, you know, to pick what you want to do when you haven't got any experience of it. So you can come and start knowing that you just take those 2 papers and then you can sort of sample other science papers around that.
Okay, and then what can we do with a genetics degree? So for career options, again, and because it's so broad, and because we actually fit in with lots of different other majors and different paper choices as well, even at 3rd year. So it kind of depends on what sort of path the student has taken throughout their genetics at Otago, what they might end up doing. So as Tina says, they might be really maths and statsy. And so if they're like, we're crying out for students that can handle statistics and genetics, there's lots of jobs in that, like in quantitative genetics and things like that. And then also if they're really into computers, there's a whole field of bioinformatics, and again they're crying out for jobs in that. Or they might be that's not their thing at all, and there's other job options where they might be doing more traditional research in a lab. So there's options to work in health, medicine and biotechnology. So working in Crown Research Institutes, universities, biotech companies. There's actually an amazing number of biotech companies in New Zealand. Diagnostics, cytogeneticists, embryologists, genomics, so a huge field, evolution, conservation, if they've gone more down the zoology or the botany kind of path, in genetics, agriculture, horticulture, and working for government departments like DOC or MPI. There's also law and gene is a really good fit as well, and scientific ethics and law or patent law specialist, genetic counselling, journalism, social media, politics, and teaching as well, and science, sales and marketing. And here's just a few of our recent graduates. And so some of those have gone on to do are doing postgrad just now. And then Farron, who's one of in the photo, she is gone on to work at ag research in an animal genetics field. Okay, so that's
that's it. Any questions?
All right, awesome, team. We've got some time for some questions, so we'll stop the screen sharing and then we can ask questions. I'll remove the spotlight. Fantastic. Any questions, anybody? Oh, there's a question in the chat.
Yeah, you're going to address that one?
I'll do all of them, yeah. So Kay asked the question, would a student need a postgrad qualification to study genetics to gain a position after graduating, or do undergrads get positions, which follows on your last slide? Yes.
Should I go for it?
You can go for it.
I think that if you know you want to work in a research environment, then you probably need that 4th year, because it gives you, I mean, the thing at 4th year is that half of your time is spent in a research lab. So you have a real, you come out with a lot more experience than you do at 300 level. So you would not necessarily not be able to get it, but you'd very likely be competing for positions with people who did have that extra qualification.
It would depend, yeah, and I suppose it depends at what level, because if they're going in, like our graduates, our straight BSc graduates do get positions as well, but it would be at a lower level, and then some of them might end up going on further after that as well. So it kind of, I suppose it depends, who they end up working for.
Awesome. Anybody else? Any other questions? I've got a question for you. Why would we come to Otago to genetics?
I think because we cover a whole range of genetics. I had a quick look at I don't know if I'm allowed to say this.
Go on, say it.
Another university And it seemed to me that their genetics was mostly, it was in the biomedical sciences, and it was really had the strong biomedical focus. Now we do have a biomedical focus, but we also cover the whole range of genetics, right? So we don't just focus on biomedical. And I think then one of the nice things about the second year is that there's only 3 papers that we that are genetics papers, and so you've got that flexibility that if you like the medical side, you can take some more medical focused papers. If you like the zoology or botanical side, you can fit in some of those papers as well. And also you can take expand out to sort of a non-science paper, or really try some different things in there. So I'd say that breadth. I'd say there's. I mean, of course, I'm completely biased, right? I feel like we have the teaching program, but we also have Geneticists Otago, which is the sort of the research arm. And I think there's a lot of energy around genetics down here. There's a lot of really enthusiastic genetics researchers who love to teach into the program as well. So
I think you're allowed to be biased in this forum here. So it's all good. We're accepted. Yeah. Any other questions from anybody else out there, or from Schools Liaison that you might have got with students as well along the way? No. Again, no questions, but again, if you think, oh, sorry, was that a question? No. Again, if you think of any questions, pop them in the chat and we will collate them and send them to the dream team in genetics. The other cool thing about genetics is they have amazing t-shirts. I don't know if you can see Gillian's t-shirt there, but it's pretty amazing. So boom, that's a great into genetics. The other thing is, do you want to talk briefly about your hands-on program as well that you do with genetics? Do you have a program there with hands-on?
Yeah, that's right. So we do both hands-on and we do the Science Academy, the OWASA. Yeah. So we offer programs there. So actually both students get to clone a gene. So they get to come down and do gene cloning. And we normally kill off our genetics technician as well, so they can solve a crime and lots and look at fruit fly genetics. So quite a broad project for those guys, and they really enjoy it. So we're both involved in that, and really enjoy it. It's good fun.
And they should plug there for Handson Otago, which we'll talk about later on as well. It's a great program for young people to get involved in. But if there's no more questions, let's raise our hands and say thank you to I call them the dream team. Wait a minute, there's a question. Awesome. Thanks, Sally. Hold that applause. If a school leaver doesn't have a science background, would they struggle?
I think no, because I think for example, it might be a challenge, right? If you have no science at all, I'd say that the first year courses do tend to be quite a lot of content, but there's a really great support crew around first year. So if the student was, say, a very committed student, was really keen to get involved in it, they could catch up with support from the teaching fellows around that. There's really the first year papers are really very well supported, and so that they would have access to one-on-one tutorials and a whole lot of online support as well. So I think
awesome. Thanks, Tina. Sorry, Prajesh loves to talk about genetics, but we need to focus on the bioethics minor.
I was going for the bell, Karen. I was going for the bell.
Thanks a lot, our genetics team. Prajesh, do you want to welcome Neil?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, team. Let's give them a round of applause now. Okay. What we've noticed our last two speakers is they both had a common thread, which was talking about covered the COVID pandemic, the vaccine production, and the genomes. And I guess in the world we live in today, that raises a whole another realm of interest, which is bioethics. And our next speaker, Associate Professor Dr. Neil Pickering, is going to speak about the bioethics minor that we have at the University of Otago. Welcome to our session, Dr. Pickering.
Kia ora koutou. I don't have a presentation, so I'm afraid you're going to have to put up with looking at me. Atamare he kei mahi aho kei tau pak te pōkapu matatiki kaui ora. Kei te koa te nā kau Tikaka korero ki a koto I tēnei rā. Hi, so my name's Neil, and I come from the Bioethics Centre at the University of Otago, Te Pokapū Matatiki Koiora. And I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to speak to you briefly today, actually about a subject you may never have heard of. I don't have too much time, so I'm going to have to be fairly quick about it. Now, I wonder how many of your students who are thinking of studying would like, along with having a great student experience and perhaps getting a good job at the end of it all, would like to make the world a better place. But this raises a question: what sort of world is a better one than the one we have currently? And bioethics is the study of right and wrong and good and bad in relation to living things. And its methods are those of critical reflection on argument and assumptions. Now, many students who go to university will be aiming to study living things. In fact, our speakers so far today have been describing options to study pharmaceuticals and genetics, for example. And later on, I think someone will even be talking to you about aquaculture. So students, for instance, in these courses, and you've already heard what they will learn in them, but just to, they might learn about how the body metabolizes drugs, or they may learn about some genes' contribution to disease. Now, bioethics asks should questions. This drug may have this hoped for effect on humans. Should we try it out on animals first? This drug could make humans smarter. Is that the kind of drug we should be developing? This gene causes an incurable fatal disease. We might be able to eradicate it from families by germline gene therapy. But is germline gene therapy a good thing? This gene is supposedly connected to altruism. Should we seek to implant it in everyone? These questions, and many hundreds more like them, are likely to arise for any thoughtful young person, and to occur more as they develop, alongside all the other questions they have, and alongside their other studies. Now, these questions may be debated in classrooms, in student studies, in cafeterias, and in bars. Typically they are. But bioethics is not the mere venting of opinions. It aims at light, not heat. It's the systematic study of reasons which can be used to decide what makes a better world, and not only for humans, but for animals and plants too. It aims to provide students with reflectively developed ways of thinking through questions about what may be wrong with the present and how the future should look. So a bioethics minor lies alongside other studies. Indeed, though I've focused on the sciences largely, a bioethics minor is for anyone. At Otago, it can be taken alongside any major. And I might add, only Otago offers this minor. Those who teach it, largely, but not only from the Bioethics Centre, are highly research active, international experts in their specialist fields. A student who takes the core papers of the minor will have considered bioethics in relation to the life sciences, in relation to human health, in relation to animals, and in relation to the environment. They will have had the opportunity to consider approaches which arise internationally, nationally, and indigenously. they will be able to articulate what a better world may look like. Ngā mihi nui.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Pickering. Any questions? I have a question for you. How many students do you think, or have you got interested in the program at the moment? Is it a very common program?
Well, the program only started this year,
Yeah.
and this is the first time actually we've attempted to market it.
Yes.
Currently, we have 8 students doing it. We have many, many more students doing individual papers.
Brilliant.
And you'll notice from what the other presenters have been saying that there are always opportunities for students to pick up additional papers apart from the core ones, and ours are offered in second and third year to those students. But what the bioethics minor does is enable them to take a number of these and come out with a parallel qualification.
Yes, and suppose, Neil, that I love bioethics as the minor. Does that then allow me to apply for any postgrad study in the bioethics program later on?
Yeah, we have a very active postgraduate program. We have 2 streams: bioethics, pure bioethics on the one hand, and bioethics and health law on the other hand. And we do postgraduate diplomas, masters, and PhDs.
Fantastic, brilliant. It's great to see that they can grow into the program if they find that very interesting. Any questions about the bioethics program at Otago? No, if there's none.
I've got one, Prajesh. Neil,
yeah,
I'm just
sure.
wondering what else is offered at other universities, Neil? Like, who else is doing this kind of stuff?
We know we've got good connections with teachers in the other universities, but there's no other systematic program. We also actually teach into the individual other people's programs. We do that a lot. But this is an opportunity for students to bring together all these different areas of interest they might have and systematically consider the whole sort of ethical impact of what's going on in science and also in other parts of society as well.
I think that there's a leading question there for you, Neil, is if I was a year 13 student at school, what kind of young person would be attracted to this program? Because, you know, we have philosophy, which is questioning things apparently, and we have bioethics. What kind of young person would be attracted to this program or to try this program?
We do have crossovers with philosophy, because critical thinking is one of our basic fundamental things. So I think it's a young person who is, you know, interested in making a mark on the world, and perhaps intends to do it through, say, studying one of the sciences and moving on to create or to help to create drugs, or look at new genetic things, or work in animal science, but who has a conscience and is a critic. And actually, my experience of school students, and both my children are at secondary school at the moment, is that that's pretty much all of them, potentially. Of course, it's not for everyone, but I think they all have the potential to want to ask these questions and find a really good way of answering them.
That's beautiful. We have a nice question here from Sally, who's asking some fantastic questions. Thank you, Sally. This question is a next level for you, Neil. Does economic gain impact on bioethics?
Does economic gain
impact
on bioethics? Okay.
We could have a long time. Yeah.
Well, you might. There are different ways you could take this question. So, Sally, you'll have to tell me if I'm taking it the wrong way. So, one way of taking it might be: does it matter if something we propose to do from an ethical point of view? Does it matter that's something we propose to do, has an economic gain, brings, say, more income into the country or more income to an industry or so on and so forth? And the answer is yes, to the extent that economic gain represents a benefit. Benefit is a good. And so it gets a thumbs up from that point of view. But is the economic gain at the price of something else which we value? Is it at the price, for instance, of environmental degradation? And then you're really getting into it, because you may have one of these clashes where, say, one human good, the benefit, say, of employment and a richer society, is set against another human good, maybe the good indeed of other humans or of other living species. So the question, goes straight to the heart of the kind of thing we do. And, this is not a voting matter. I mean, people do vote on these things, so that's political. The question is, what reasons could you give me to support this maybe economically advantageous arrangement? And what reasons could you give me against it? And which of those reasons are more significant?
I think that's a great question. I think that's a great question for us to ponder and have a think about. And thank you very much, Neil. I'm going to hand it over to Amber to do her thing.
So I just want to take this opportunity to thank all three of our speakers. There were some really great points. I learned from everything. Neil, I really love how the way you really summed up bioethics is that's the should questions. Should we be doing these things? Yes, we can, but should we? I love that mindset around that. With our genetics dream team, all of the different applications, and also those ethical questions too about de-extinction, bringing in the bioethics there too. And then also through our pharmaceutical sciences, just how applicable it is to so many different industries. I didn't even think that it could apply to explosives. So these have been really great sessions, and I just want to thank all of you for your time. And if we can do some waves, or if we turn off our mute really quickly to thank all of our speakers. Thank you so much for your time, and we really appreciate you here today.
Ngā mihi.
Now,
Awesome. Oh, sorry, back to you, Amber.
No, it's you and then it's me again. So off.
Oh, I was just going to say thank you, everyone. We're going to give you a little bit of a break. You can go and make a cup of tea or go to the whare paku, and then we'll be back at 10 o'clock with Shelley from Law.